Hi, I'm just going to film this like we're on FaceTime. So, who is Stephanie Jenkins? Most of this information comes directly from her mom. Stephanie is number 3 of 6 kids. All of the other 5 kids still speak to their mom. They have a good relationship. She was raised in a Christian household with rules and spanking, but mom says she didn't think it was excessive. Now, Stephanie wasn't raised by her dad. She was raised by her mom's second husband, which he did adopt Stephanie, though. He adopted all of her kids. And they did end up getting a divorce, but he paid child support for all of the kids, even though they weren't biologically his. He adopted them, paid child support for them, and her biological dad didn't. So I don't know who he is, but I feel like he gets a point for that. Around 16 years old is when her and her mom stopped getting along. And this is when Stephanie started smoking. Stephanie becomes a different person when she smokes. And Stephanie met a man named Jeremiah. Jeremiah Christian Thompson is not a good person. He is a registered SO. And he is currently in prison. For a long time. He's not good. He's not a good person. So when Stephanie met him, he lied to her. So he did tell her that he was a registered SO, but he had an excuse for everything that had happened. So one of the excuses that he gave to her, he was convicted of essaying his mom. And what he told Stephanie was he never did that to his mom. His brother did that to his mom, but his brother had already been in trouble. So they made Jeremiah take the fall for it. So it was excuses like that for all of his behavior. But you have to remember also he's a predator. He is charming and charismatic and manipulative. That's what they do. They're very good at it. So I guess, fault her for being young and being tricked by a predator. I think that that's something that's actually quite common. And it's a shame because if she had a better relationship with her mom, it might have been something her mom could have protected her from, because as an adult, it's very obvious to see that type of man. But when you're young, it's not. It's just not. So anyways, Stephanie brought Jeremiah over to her mom's house, and knowing that she was a registered SO, did not tell anyone. And her little brothers were 7 and 8 years old, and one of Jeremiah's victims was the same age. So, like, girl, that was crazy. Her mom found out. They got in a big fight over it, obviously. After that, her mom moved to California. And Stephanie stayed in Washington, I think. She was in Washington. So Stephanie and Jeremiah got married and then got pregnant. That was when she reached back out to her mom and told her she was pregnant. And mom was like, oh my God, that's so exciting. Because even though she hates Jeremiah, it's still, her daughter's having a baby. Okay. So mom comes up for the birth. And Jeremiah is being very controlling and, like, psycho in the hospital. And mom sticks up for Stephanie and is like, okay, well, she's the one having the baby, so, like, relax or something like that. He flipped out because you can't say that to people like that. And he used this as an excuse to drive a further wedge between Stephanie and her mom. Saying that her mom wasn't a good person. And this was when the first accusation of childhood trauma came from Stephanie. Her mom thinks that when Stephanie's partner does not want her family around, because she has a supportive family, Stephanie does, when her controlling partner does not want Stephanie to have access to her own family, they feed her this BS. Where they drive a wedge between her and her family, and then for Stephanie to cope with that herself, she I don't want to say makes up this trauma, but essentially her mom's saying, like, she kind of makes up this trauma, and that way she can justify why she's not speaking to the rest of the family. Mom and Stephanie don't talk for a couple of years. Then Stephanie, Jeremiah, and their oldest daughter, Addie, moved to California to live with mom. This was when their oldest was 2 years old. Mom tried to get Jeremiah a job with the town because that's where she worked. And they did a background check. And the background check was horrifying. And really, the background check revealed way more stuff than mom even knew about. She took Jeremiah for a drive and confronted him about everything. And he made up a ton of excuses for every single thing that happened. And mom was like, you know, if you had been honest with me and said, like, I did these, I'm a different person, blah, 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 and, like, you know, I'm trying to be a better person, she's like, I would have respected you. But now that you've made up an excuse for every single thing you've ever done, I don't believe a word you're saying, and I'm going to be your biggest nightmare. The next morning, mom went to work, came home from work, all their stuff was gone. They packed the U-Haul up and moved out. Didn't say a word. Her mom didn't even know that Stephanie had gotten pregnant and had a second daughter, which is Bella. She showed up. So Stephanie showed up at her mom's house with Bella and the older daughter when Bella was 10 months old. And CPS told Stephanie if she didn't leave Jeremiah that night, that they were taking the girls. Mom says that she believes there was grooming behavior was happening with the oldest daughter. Listen, I don't know what was going on, but for CPS to do something it could not have been good. Stephanie moved in with her mom and her 3 brothers. And somebody had to be home with Stephanie at all times. She was ready to end it all. So somebody had to be home with her at all times. Unfortunately for Stephanie, Jeremiah had access to her Facebook and could read all of her Facebook messages. So anytime she was talking to her brothers or her mom on Facebook Messenger, Jeremiah was screenshotting this and using it as evidence against her to show that she was mentally unstable because he wanted the girls. And he had a lawyer. So mom says, we need a lawyer. And she calls Stephanie's adoptive dad. So her ex-husband, but the one who adopted Stephanie. So Stephanie's adoptive dad still owed 2 years of child support to her mom. So mom said, hey, Stephanie needs a divorce. You owe 2 years left. Can you give it to me as a lump sum? And then I can put it down as a retainer for a lawyer because she's going to lose her girls to this predator. So dad was like, yeah, okay. Gives her the money. And the reason it was so expensive, I guess, was because at this time they were living in California, but the divorce had to happen in Washington. Mom gave the lawyer, it ended up being $12,000 initially. Well, it was $10,000 initially, then another $2,000. The problem was Jeremiah would go to this lawyer every single day asking silly questions. And they didn't know that he was doing this. He was doing it on purpose because he knew that Stephanie and her mom didn't have a lot of money, and he comes from a family with money. So it was $240 for every single question that he asked. So that's what he did. And Stephanie had to end up filing for bankruptcy because of this. But then on top of that, on top of the lawyer debt, she did also owe a bunch of money on credit cards, I guess. And then she also totaled her mom's Prius. And we'll get into that in a second. But Jeremiah comes from a family of money. And he knew how to play the game. And he had all those messages of her saying she wanted to end it all. So she was going to lose the girls. And that's pretty much what her mom told her was, if I didn't hire you this lawyer, you would have lost your girls. And Stephanie's like, I didn't want a lawyer, and now I have to file bankruptcy. Somehow in the bankruptcy, it got messed up, and the lawyer fees never got added to Stephanie's bankruptcy. So Now she still owes that money. And this just drove a huge wedge in between her and her mom. That's going to do it. If anything's going to do it, I think it's like $30,000 in debt from a lawyer that you didn't necessarily want. It doesn't really matter if you needed it. In Stephanie's head, she didn't want the lawyer. Her mom made her get it, and now she owes 30 grand. I get it. I get why she's mad. However, you did need the lawyer. So back to the Prius. So Stephanie totaled her mom's Prius and then lost her job and went to rehab. This is before meeting Drew. We're after Jeremiah, and we're before Drew. And we're not really ever after Jeremiah because they are still legally married. They ran out of money. They couldn't get the divorce done. So they are legally still married. So now they're back in Oregon. And they have a 3-bedroom apartment. Her mom and her sister's baby. Mom says Stephanie and the 2 girls can move in. Her sister tolerated it for 3 months and had to leave. So they had a 3-bedroom. Stephanie had a room, mom had a room, and then the 2 girls had a room. Stephanie was working overnights. Mom was watching the kids. Now, the way it works, though, is mom was like a certified childcare or whatever through the state. So the state was paying mom to watch Stephanie's kids while she worked. And then Stephanie was also paying, I think it was a third of the rent. And this was when she met Drew. Drew was like, whatever. So they hit it off. I don't know. He was working at a gas station. So she met Drew, and Drew had said to Stephanie, don't leave your mom's house until the end of your lease because, well, one, you're going to screw your mom over because the state pays her to watch the kids and you pay a third of the rent. You can't move out. And this was when he was living in the 1-bedroom with his second oldest, Deshaun. So, and that was the 1-bedroom we met them all in. So he was like, don't leave your mom's house. Stay there because you're going to screw her over. But also, I'm living in a 1-bedroom with my son. Like, where are you going to live? And Drew had said to mom, don't do that to your mom. Like, we're not going to screw you over. Drew said, I'm going to save up money for a 2-bedroom apartment. Stay at your mom's house. And then overnight, Stephanie says, Drew and I decided we want to be together right now. And her mom was like, how is that going to work? He has literally 1 bedroom and a child already. And you have 2. Like, girl, what? And then also, like, you're screwing me over. Like, what do you mean? And Stephanie was like, well, just submit the forms to the state that you're watching the girls and I'll just sign them. And her mom was like, I'm not doing that. Like, are you kidding me? Because, like, you can get a lot of trouble for that. Like, girl, what? Like, you go to jail for that. So mom was like, no. And questioned Stephanie, like, why are you moving into this man's 1-bedroom apartment? And Stephanie says that Drew said the landlord would tell them when a 2-bedroom opened up and they would get the first one. Now, it ended up being that the landlord had no idea Stephanie was even moving in. Nobody knows who is lying. Did the landlord say that to Drew and then forget? Did Drew lie to Stephanie and say that? Did Stephanie lie to her mom and say that? Nobody knows. But somehow that lie was told. So they moved in to the 1-bedroom apartment, and her mom went over, saw the kids on the floor in the living room, and then her and Drew in the nice bedroom, and was very against it. Pretty much saying, like, Drew's not a provider. Like, girl, what are you doing? that you get into these relationships with these weird men that like control you and then like don't provide for you. Obviously Stephanie hated that because no one wants to hear the truth. And then at the time that she moved in with Drew, she had a car that she had bought after she totaled her mom's Prius. She bought it from her mom. This was the car they traded in to get the minivan. Okay. The minivan made sense. But Drew always had the car because he was working. So she couldn't leave and like take the kids to do anything. She was just stuck in the 1-bedroom apartment. So then Drew or her, who knows, they wanted a second car. But Drew wanted the Jetta, which is not practical because at this point there were 5 of them. I mean, I guess they would all fit. I don't remember if she was pregnant at this point. She might have been pregnant at this point. But anyways, there's no way that they all would have comfortably fit or maybe legally fit in the Jetta. And then all of a sudden the minivan had all these problems and poof, now Drew has a new Jetta. So that's how the Jetta happened. And that kind of brings us up to where they started posting on TikTok. This is like 2021.